Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into a really critical part of any pharmaceutical quality system, the internal audit. We're going to talk about how to flip the script on these things and turn them from something people dread into a powerful tool that actually protects you. So, let's just start with our really direct question. I want you to think about your own organization for a second. Is your internal audit a genuine tool for getting better? Or does it feel more like a weapon? Something people fear that's just used to find fault? Because, how your team answers that question, that changes absolutely everything. So, why is getting this mindset right so incredibly important? Well, because when you have a passive wait-and-see approach to quality, you create a very real and very high-stakes problem. I call it the danger in waiting. Let's be totally honest here. In the pharma industry, you absolutely cannot afford to wait for a regulator to show up at your door and find your problems for you. I mean, at that point, it's just too late. The fallout can be massive. It can mess with your production, your reputation, your public trust, the whole shebang. Playing defense here, that's a losing game every time. Okay, so that's the problem. What's the fix? Well, instead of just waiting around for an external inspection, you build what I like to call a proactive shield. And that shield, as you've probably guessed, is a really solid internal audit program. So what are we actually talking about when we say internal audit? It's pretty simple, really. It's a planned checkup that you do on yourselves to make sure your own rules, your standard operating procedures, or SOPs, are actually being followed in the real world. Think of it like a routine physical for your company's health. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of the matter. It's all about this mindset shift. There's this myth that an audit's only job is to find what's wrong and point fingers. But the reality, its real purpose is just to make sure the right processes are being followed. It's not about catching people making mistakes. It's about catching problems in the system before they blow up. But what does a really good, effective audit actually look like in practice? What are the moving parts? All right, let's break down the anatomy of what makes an audit strong. Any strong audit really has 5 essential non-negotiable pieces. First, you've got to plan it out annually. It can't just be random. Second, you need a team that's actually trained to do this. Third, and this is a big one, your auditor has to be independent from whatever department they're looking at. That's how you get an unbiased view. Fourth, everything you find has to be clearly documented with evidence. And finally, you have to follow up with a Corrective and Preventive Action Plan, or a CAPA, to actually fix the issues you found. So what are auditors really looking for? Well, they're asking some pretty fundamental questions. Things like, are those SOPs just fancy documents collecting dust on a shelf, or are people actually following them out on the floor? Are the records you're keeping complete and accurate? Is your whole system for handling deviations and CAPAs actually working the way it's supposed to? The answers to these questions, they tell you everything about the true health of your quality system. Now, it's super important to remember that not all findings are created equal. Observations are usually sorted by risk. A minor finding might be a small slip-up in paperwork. A major one could be a pretty significant departure from procedure. And a critical observation? Whoa, that's a showstopper. That's something that could seriously risk product quality or even patient safety. Sorting them like this helps you figure out what to fix right now. Of course, knowing the right way to do things and actually doing them, well, they can be 2 totally different things. So let's talk about some of the common pitfalls that can make an otherwise good audit program pretty much useless. So what are the classic red flags? The things that tell you your audit program is, well, broken. First, you've got audits that are just a surface-level check-the-box kind of thing. Then you see observations being made, but there's no real follow-up, so nothing ever changes. And maybe the biggest red flag of all, seeing the exact same findings pop up in the report year after year after year. That's a huge sign your system just isn't working. And here's the kicker. Here's why getting this right is so incredibly important. When those regulatory inspectors show up, they can, and very often they do, ask to see your internal audit reports. They want to see if you are finding your own problems, and more importantly, if you're fixing them. A weak internal audit report can be just as bad as the problems it fails to find in the first place. When you step back and look at all of this, it starts to point to something much, much bigger than just the audit process itself. What we're really talking about here is your company's entire culture of quality. Now, here's a fascinating, kind of counterintuitive idea for you. You might think that a perfect audit, one with 0 findings, is a reason to celebrate. But honestly, it could actually be a massive red flag. It might mean your audit is too shallow to find real problems, or even worse, it could mean you have a culture where people are too afraid to report issues. A healthy, honest audit program should be finding opportunities to improve. So let's bring this all together with the big takeaway. We have got to reframe how we think about this. An internal audit is not a tool for punishment. It's not about blame. It's a protective tool. It is your best defense, your early warning system to find and fix problems long before a regulator ever sees them. And most importantly, before they could ever harm a patient. So let's end on this thought. A company that has the courage and the systems in place to audit itself honestly, to really find its own flaws and then actively work to fix them, that's a company that is always ready. It has nothing to fear when an external inspector walks in. So the final question is pretty simple. Is yours?